All right, so Gladiator to Sec. It's certainly got folks talking, especially those who, really loved that original Gladiator.
Yeah.
We've got a whole stack of review articles all ready to sort of dig into what's causing all the buzz,
right?
Both good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
The big question, though, I think on everyone's mind is, can this sequel possibly live up to, the original Gladiator?
Well, I mean, the original Gladiator is it's a tough act to follow.
Right.
It wasn't just a box office, smash, but it swept the Oscars, even winning Best Picture,
Yeah.
But the hero, Maximus, he dies at the end. And so that's a pretty definitive ending.
Yeah.
So where do you go from there?
Right. Okay, so you've got this movie that everyone loves.
Right.
And an ending that kind of wraps things up just perfectly.
Yep.
So how do they even, approach a sequel?
Well, that's the fascinating part, is that Gladiator 2, it centers on Lucius.
Okay.
The young boy from the original, who is the son of Lucilla.
Right. And the nephew of Commodus, the emperor that Maximus defeats. And so we've fast-forwarded quite a bit. And Lucius is now played by Paul Mescal.
Okay.
He's at the heart of this new story.
I think I read somewhere that Ridley Scott, the director, had always kind of wanted to explore what happened to Lucius after the events of the first film.
Oh, yeah.
It makes sense, right?
Right.
I mean, Maximus's death, you have to think, had to have a profound impact on this kid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that connection to the original is definitely something that critics are picking up on.
Yeah.
But their opinions on whether or not it actually works, let's just say they're all over the place.
Oh, really? So give me the rundown. What are the critics saying?
Well, it's like they watched two different movies.
Okay.
Some are calling it thrilling and relentlessly entertaining, even using words like gobsmacking.
Wow, gobsmacking. That's pretty strong.
Yeah.
What exactly are they blown away by?
It seems like Ridley Scott, even at 86.
Yeah. Isn't afraid to experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And some critics are pointing to a camp element in Gladiator 2.
Okay.
That sort of intentionally over-the-top,
Right.
tongue-in-cheek style.
Yeah.
They're saying that it's like he's injecting some fun and absurdity into this historical epic genre.
Okay, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah.
Can't be Gladiator.
Yeah.
All right, so I can see why that would be dividing some critics.
Exactly, yeah. So some see it as a bold, creative choice, while others are kind of labeling it as a Marvel-esque approach, suggesting that the story is thin, the characters aren't as fully developed.
Right, so it sounds like some critics feel like maybe it's leaning a little too heavily on spectacle,
right,
and not enough on the substance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That seems to be a common thread among the more negative reviews, is that they feel like it's trying to recapture the magic of the original, but falling a little bit short.
Okay. So what about Paul Mescal? He's got some pretty big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Following Russell Crowe's iconic performance as Maximus, right?
Right.
So are the critics convinced?
Well, I mean, that's the elephant in the Colosseum, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the Crowe comparison.
Right.
And so, some critics were praising Mescal, calling him formidable, highlighting his brooding presence.
Okay.
They say that he's, a strong actor. He can hold his own on screen.
There's always a but, right?
Right, yeah. Others, and perhaps inevitably, find him a bit flat in comparison to Crowe.
Yeah.
One even went so far as to call him a millennial knockoff.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah.
That's got to be tough to hear for any actor,
Right.
But, I mean, it's almost unfair to compare anyone to Crowe in that role, right?
It is.
I mean, Maximus was such a powerful, larger-than-life character.
That's true. And it's important to remember that Mescal is portraying Lucius, a character who's grown up in the shadow of Maximus's legacy. He's not trying to be Maximus.
Right.
He's forging his own path.
Right, okay. So we've got a divisive sequel, a campy twist,
Yeah.
and a lead actor facing an impossible task
Right.
of trying to live up to Russell Crowe.
Yeah.
What else have you uncovered in these reviews?
There's one thing that most critics do seem to agree on, and that's the visual spectacle.
Oh, I was just about to ask about that, actually.
Yeah.
Because I've heard whispers about some truly over-the-top action sequences.
It's not just whispers. It's critics are describing scenes that sound straight out of a fever dream.
Oh, wow.
Gladiators riding rhinoceroses, battles in a flooded Colosseum with sharks circling below.
Okay, that's just crazy.
Yeah.
But hold on. I remember earlier you were saying that some critics were calling the film Marvel-esque,
Right.
which usually means leaning too heavily on the CGI and the spectacle over story.
Right.
So how is that different with this?
Well, that's where things get interesting. The critics who are praising the film's visuals aren't just talking about the wow factor. They're highlighting the the advancements in digital technology,
Right.
and how they've allowed Scott to really push the boundaries of what's possible.
So give me an example.
Sure.
So what are they talking about specifically?
Oh, several reviews mention this particular technique called de-aging that's used in the film. And apparently it's so seamlessly done, you can hardly even tell it's CGI.
Wow.
So, it's not just about throwing visual effects at the screen. It's about using them to enhance the storytelling.
Okay, I'm starting to see the difference.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got stunning visuals.
Yeah.
But the jury's still out on the story. And whether or not Mescal can fill those gladiator sandals.
Right.
What about the rest of the cast? Any standout performances besides Mescal?
Actually, yes.
Oh, okay.
Denzel Washington as Maximus is getting rave reviews.
He plays this former slave who's now a gladiator manager.
Okay.
So, a powerful figure behind the scenes.
Denzel and gladiators.
I know, right?
That's not a combination I would imagine.
I know.
Yeah.
But it works.
Okay.
Critics are calling him brilliant and lip-smacking, even suggesting he almost steals the entire picture.
Wow.
And it's not just his charisma, although he's got that in spades.
Right.
But they're praising his nuanced performance, the way he embodies this, this complex character who's both ruthless and sympathetic.
Okay, now that's an interesting nugget.
Yeah.
Denzel as a morally ambiguous gladiator manager. Color me intrigued. Are there any other supporting actors getting attention?
There's some buzz around Pedro Pascal, who, always seems to win over audiences.
Yeah.
And apparently Joseph Quinn and Fred Hetchinger, who play Roman Emperor twins,
Right.
are being compared to Joaquin Phoenix's Commodus
Okay.
from the original. Interesting.
In a good way.
Now that's interesting. I mean, Commodus was such a great villain.
Was.
So if they're being compared to him, they must be doing something right.
Right.
So it sounds like we've got this visually impressive film with some potentially great performances.
Right.
But the story and whether or not Mescal can kind of pull off this lead role are still question marks.
Yeah, that's a good summary of where things stand.
Yeah.
It seems like Gladiator 2 might be a case of style over substance for some critics, while others see something a little more, complex at play.
And that brings us back to the original question, right?
Yeah.
Can Gladiator 2 Seconds stand on its own 2 feet?
Right.
Can it escape the shadow of the original and deliver a compelling story? Well, to answer that, we need to dig a little deeper.
We do.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about the spectacle and the performances.
Right.
The challenge of following up such an iconic film. But let's not forget that both of these Gladiator films are set against this backdrop of ancient Rome.
Right.
This world of emperors and gladiators and political intrigue and lots of violence.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that some critics are saying that Gladiator 2 Second actually uses this historical setting to reflect on our modern world.
Okay.
Our anxieties or political struggles.
Now that's something I want to unpack a little bit.
Yeah.
Give me an example. How are they connecting, ancient Rome to today's world?
Well, several reviewers pointed to the film's depiction of political corruption in the Roman elite.
Right.
And they're drawing parallels to, current concerns about political polarization, the erosion of democracy, even the rise of populism.
Right.
It's like they're saying, look, the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the Roman Empire with its emperors, senators, gladiatorial games, these vast social divides, it's a pretty powerful lens for exploring these kinds of themes, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And this is where Ridley Scott's experience, really shines.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not just delivering, some popcorn flick.
Right.
He's crafting a film that really resonates with contemporary issues.
Okay, so we've got these political parallels. What about the gladiators themselves?
Right.
I mean, the original Gladiator didn't shy away from the brutality of the arena.
Right.
But it also, showed their courage, their camaraderie.
Yeah.
What kind of glimpses do we get from the reviews about how Gladiator 2 portrays, gladiator life?
Well, it seems like Gladiator 2 digs a little deeper into the human side of these warriors. Critics mention scenes that explore their training regimens, the bonds that they forge with each other, the psychological toll of their existence.
That's crucial, right? I mean, these weren't just mindless barbarians.
Right.
They were skilled athletes, often forced into this life, who relied on each other for survival.
Yeah.
Both physically and emotionally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating is that Gladiator 2 seems to acknowledge the economic realities of gladiatorial combat.
Ooh.
One review even described a scene where a senator is talking about the vast sums of money wagered on these fights.
Wow.
So it really highlights the business side of this brutal spectacle.
That kind of ties back into the political corruption theme too, doesn't it?
It does.
It's all interconnected. The power, the money, the exploitation.
Yeah.
Like this whole system built on violence.
Absolutely, yeah. The gladiatorial games were a reflection of Roman society,
Yeah.
The power dynamics, the social hierarchy, the fascination with violence. And this is where things get really interesting because it makes you think about how we, as a modern audience, view violence in entertainment.
It's a question that's been debated for centuries, right?
It has.
I mean, the Romans had their gladiatorial games. We have our action movies and video games and mixed martial arts.
Right.
I mean, are we that different?
And that's the question that Gladiator 2 seems to be asking.
Yeah.
Some reviewers mention that even with its, over-the-top action and CGI,
Right.
the film doesn't shy away from the brutality of violence.
Okay.
It doesn't glorify it.
Which is interesting given all the talk about camp and over-the-top visuals.
Right.
It sounds like Ridley Scott is walking a tightrope here.
Yeah.
Giving the audience, spectacle, but also reminding them of the real-world consequences.
Exactly. And that's what elevates Gladiator 2, I think, beyond, just a typical action film. It's engaging with these complex questions, prompting us to confront our own, fascination with violence.
And it also makes you consider how differently violence was perceived in ancient Rome, right? I mean, for them, gladiatorial combat was part of their culture, their religion, their entertainment.
Right.
It's a reminder that our moral compass kind of evolves over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that brings up a really important point, which is how do we, as modern viewers, approach a film like Gladiator 2?
Right.
Do we judge it based on, our 21st century values, or do we try to understand it within its historical context?
It's a thought-provoking question, and it really gets to the heart of how we interpret history, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we can't help but view the past through our own lens, our own values, but it's essential to try to understand the historical context.
Precisely. And as you watch Gladiator 2, I really encourage you to think about those layers of interpretation. Consider how the film uses the past to comment on the present.
Right.
How it navigates the complexities of violence.
Yeah.
And what it might be saying about our own cultural fascinations.
So much to consider. And I think that's what makes this, this deep dive so fascinating, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not just, looking at a movie.
Right.
We're exploring ideas, history, our own perceptions. Mm-hmm. But before we wrap up, we need to talk about the man behind the camera.
We do.
Okay, so we've talked about the story and the actors, the historical context, and the thought-provoking themes. Mm-hmm. But Gladiator 2 is also this visual feast.
It is.
So let's talk about the man who brought it all together, Ridley Scott.
Yeah, it's remarkable, isn't it? He's directed everything from, historical epics like Gladiator to sci-fi classics like Blade Runner and Alien. And what's striking is that, no matter the genre, he always brings this distinct visual style, this grandeur.
And he's not letting age slow him down.
No.
I mean, at 86, critics are saying he's directing Gladiator 2 with this stubborn charm and belligerent swagger.
Yeah.
Like he's determined to just defy expectations.
Yeah, and it's fascinating. Remember those camp elements we discussed?
Yeah.
That intentionally over the top style.
Yeah.
It seems like Scott might be playing with those tropes deliberately.
Okay.
Adding a layer of irony to this historical epic.
That reminds me of Quentin Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards.
Oh, yeah.
A World War II film, but with these moments of like dark humor and stylized violence. Maybe Scott is using camp in a similar way to kind of keep the audience guessing.
Yeah, it's a great comparison.
Yeah.
It seems like Scott is a master at balancing, spectacle with substance. Right.
Giving audiences this visual feast while also prompting them to think.
Speaking of spectacle, we have to talk about the visual effects.
Right.
From what we've gathered, Gladiator 2 is really like pushing the boundaries of CGI.
Yeah.
Creating scenes that would have been impossible 20 years ago.
Yeah, the reviewers are raving about the realism and the the immersive quality of the action sequences. They're describing scenes that sound almost unbelievable. Gladiators riding rhinoceroses, a coliseum flooded for a battle with sharks circling beneath the combatants.
It's mind-blowing. I mean, it makes you wonder where visual effects will go next, right? I mean, will we reach a point where it's impossible to distinguish between reality and CGI?
That's a question worth pondering.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that technology is constantly evolving, shaping the way stories are told and experienced.
But at the end of the day, technology is just a tool, right? It is.
What matters most is how it's used to create an emotional impact,
right,
to draw the audience into the world of the film.
Precisely. And it seems like Gladiator Dissetti is using those tools effectively, creating a visual experience that's both breathtaking and thought-provoking.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Gladiator 2, what are some key takeaways you want to leave our listeners with?
I think the biggest takeaway is that Gladiator 2 is more than just a sequel.
Right.
It's a conversation with the original, a reflection of our own times, and a testament to Ridley Scott's enduring vision. It's a film that is sure to spark debate, challenge expectations, and leave a lasting impression.
Whether you loved or hated the original Gladiator, this sequel promises to be a cinematic experience unlike any other.
Right.
We encourage you to go in with an open mind. Appreciate the spectacle, ponder the themes, and draw your own conclusions.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope this has given you a better understanding of the buzz surrounding Gladiator 2 and the conversations that it's sparking. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those brains buzzing.